A girl is sold by her uncle to be a prostitute, with the goal of training her to become a secret agent joined in the United States. The story starts with a girl named Dominika, who's a famous dancer and takes care of her sick mom. After a visit to the doctor, Dominika leaves her mom with someone and heads to work at the theater. There, she changes into her costume and makeup before meeting the guests, which includes her uncle Ivan Egorova, who works for the Russian Secret Service. He introduces her to Dmitry Hustinov, a Russian gangster. Dmitry asks Dominika for a picture and takes advantage of the situation to touch her inappropriately. Then, during the performance, her dancing partner accidentally breaks her leg, and Dominika needs surgery right away. The story introduces Nate Nash, a CIA agent who receives a mysterious phone call with coded words dictating a meeting location. He deciphers the message and grabs his gun before heading out. The meeting place is a park at night, where Nate realizes he's being followed by a car. Another man, known as Marble, approaches him, and they exchange something discreetly. Despite Nate's efforts to shake off the car following him, it persists. To help Marble escape, Nate creates a diversion by firing his gun and running, drawing the car's attention away. He eventually reaches safety at the American embassy, where his superiors inform him that the asset is safe, but Nate will be sent back to the USA for his actions. The following day, Ivan visits Colonel Zakharov, the director of the Secret Service, in his office. General Vladimir Korchnow is also present. They show Ivan a video of Nate's meeting at the park and inform him that Nate is a CIA agent who left the country that morning. However, their primary focus is on identifying the other man involved in the meeting. Meanwhile, we see Dominika waking up in the hospital to find her leg in a metal frame. Overwhelmed with the realization that she won't be able to dance again, she begins to cry. 3 months later, Dominika, still relying on a cane, receives a visit from Ivan. He mentions that a replacement for her has been found and explains that the theater had been assisting with the apartment and her mom's medical expenses, which will soon end now that she's no longer employed there. Ivan expresses his desire to help her and leaves an envelope before departing. Inside, Dominika finds pictures revealing her dancing partner's romantic involvement with her replacement, along with a recording suggesting that he deliberately caused her injury so his girlfriend could take Dominika's place. Later that day, Dominika finds herself in the theater, only to catch them in a compromising situation. Fueled by rage, Dominika attacks them with her cane before fleeing. On the bus home, she notices her blood-stained hand and decides to report the incident as an accident from a payphone. Upon arriving home, she discovers her mom on the bathroom floor, with the caretaker absent, citing non-payment from the theater. With no other options, Dominika seeks help from her uncle. He agrees to assist her, but in return, he asks her to help gather information about Hustinov, the man she met at the theater. Initially hesitant, Dominika eventually agrees after Ivan promises to provide her mom with the best medical care. That very night, Dominika heads to the hotel where Hustinov is staying, dressed in the attire provided by her uncle. She waits at the bar, and soon enough Hustinov approaches her. Dominika tells him she's there to feel special again, and they head to her room together. After asking his guards for privacy, Hustinov begins to undress, prompting Dominika to follow suit with some hesitation. As they get closer, Hustinov takes advantage of her. Suddenly, their encounter is interrupted by a mysterious figure wearing a black helmet who swiftly slits Hustinov's throat, then tosses Dominika a coat to cover herself, leading her out through a back exit. In the parking lot, he shoots an employee before whisking Dominika away on his motorcycle to an abandoned building. Inside, the man removes his helmet, revealing himself as Sergei Mataran, another Secret Service agent working under Ivan's orders. Meanwhile, Ivan and Korchnow watch Dominika's movements on security cameras from another room in the same building. When Korchnow suggests eliminating her as a witness, Ivan argues that she could prove useful. Ivan seeks out Dominika and admits that he was aware of what would happen in the hotel room, but didn't inform her because he knew she wouldn't have consented if she had known. He then presents her with an offer. Given her adeptness in such situations, she can be sent to a special institution to undergo training as an agent. However, he emphasizes that if she refuses, he won't be able to protect her, leaving her with little choice but to accept. Dominika agrees reluctantly, and a couple of days later she departs for the institution. Upon arrival, she is greeted by Matron, the headmistress of Sparrow School, who assigns Dominika a fake name to use during her time there. Matron then escorts her to her room, and classes commence shortly afterward. Matron lectures the students about the chaos in the modern world and Russia's willingness to make sacrifices to rectify it. She explains that the students will be trained as sparrows. specialized spies adept in seduction and psychological manipulation. Dominika and a student named Victor are called to the front of the class and asked to strip. Victor does so without issues, but Dominika doesn't dare. Then Matron scolds her for it. Next, we see Nate, called in by the CIA's disciplinary panel. They tell him he's suspended because of a mistake he made in Russia, and he can't leave the country. Nate argues that Marble, their informant, has trusted him for 3 years and won't trust anyone else. But despite his protest, Nate isn't physically harmed. Back at Sparrow School, Matron instructs the students on the importance of identifying their target's desires. She shows them videos as examples. When Victor guesses incorrectly, Dominika corrects him, earning his resentment. Another female student correctly identifies a target and is instructed to use her mouth on the man from the video, who is brought into the classroom in restraints. However, she is unable to go through with it and breaks down in tears. Matron reminds the students of the need to learn to control their bodies and teaches them basic seduction techniques. Meanwhile, in the USA, Nate notices he's being followed and alerts his superiors. He discovers that the CIA hasn't received any communication from Marble. Nate seizes the opportunity to remind them that Marble will only talk to him. They strike a deal. Nate can't return to Russia, but they'll send him to a nearby country to lure out Marble. Nate insists that his team accompany him on the mission. Meanwhile, at the school, the students are asked to welcome a group of soldiers returning home from war. Dominika selects a young man and escorts him to a private room where she skillfully offers him comfort. Later that day, Matron and the students watch recordings of their interactions with the soldiers. Matron praises Dominika's technique, but notes that she still hasn't fully learned to surrender herself to the role. After class, Dominika heads to the showers where she is assaulted by Victor. She defends herself by grabbing the water tap from the wall and hitting him with it. Meanwhile, Ivan Korchnoi and Zakharov discuss Nate's relocation to Budapest. They are concerned but hesitant to take any action that might appear antagonistic towards the United States. Ivan suggests assigning the mission to someone else. Back at Sparrow School, Matron and the newly arrived Korchnoi question Dominika about her altercation with Victor. Matron sees potential in Dominika, despite the incident. After everyone else leaves, Korchnoi requests a private conversation with Dominika. He probes her further, and she explains that she prioritizes serving the state over her classmates. Allowed to return to class, Dominika is once again called to the front by Matron, with Korchnoi observing via security camera. Dominika is shown a picture of Victor and asked to determine his desires as he enters the room. Matron instructs her to fulfill his wishes. When Victor asks her to turn around, Dominika refuses and takes control of the situation. As she undresses, she commands Victor to focus only on her. Despite her efforts, Victor fails to perform and flees when teased by Dominika. She then reveals to Matron that what Victor truly desires is power, impressing Korchnoi. Shortly after, Matron informs Dominika in private that she will be sent back to Moscow. Days later, while reuniting with her mom at their place, Dominika receives a call instructing her to meet Ivan at a restaurant. Upon arriving, she joins him and he briefs her on her next mission. She'll be sent to Budapest to befriend Nate and gain his trust to uncover the identity of their mole. Ivan provides her with a new passport and documents under a new identity. Dominika leaves the restaurant without eating. A couple of days later, she arrives in Budapest and settles into an apartment she'll share with another Sparrow, Martin. Later that day, she meets with her new boss, Station Chief Maxim Bolentov, and requests information about Nate. Afterwards, she observes Nate's daily routine. The following day, Dominika starts frequenting the same swimming pool as Nate, subtly catching his attention. As they leave the pool, they engage in casual conversation, but Dominika maintains a sense of aloofness and invents a story about working as a translator for the embassy. However, the next day, Nate doesn't show up at the pool, and the receptionist informs Dominika that her ID is missing. It becomes evident that Nate already suspects her true identity. We shift to Nate discussing with his superiors how Dominika has been using various aliases, hinting at a possible connection to Ivan. He suspects her use of her real name is a calculated move to provoke. After some deliberation, his superiors reluctantly agree to allow Nate to get closer to her for intelligence-gathering purposes. After briefing Bolentov on her progress and requesting an embassy pass, Dominika heads to the embassy. There, she observes Marta in conversation with Stephanie Voucher, an American politician. Nate interrupts her observation, confessing to stealing her ID from the pool and inviting her to dinner the next evening at 8. She accepts the invitation. Returning to her apartment, Dominika searches Marta's room and uncovers evidence of Marta's dealings with Voucher. As Marta returns, Dominika narrowly avoids detection. Marta hands Dominika a copy of the report Bolentov sent to Moscow, indicating that Dominika has made an adversary. The following day, after work, Dominika tails Bolentov to a bar and confronts him, demanding a better report. She provokes him into violence by taunting him, capturing the altercation on security cameras. Threatening to take the recording to the police, Dominika coerces Bolentov into providing a more favorable report. Meanwhile, Nate waits alone in a restaurant for their date. As he prepares to leave, Dominika follows him closely. Back in his apartment, Nate receives another coded message on his phone, decoding it to read Vienna. Just then, Dominika, visibly upset, rings his doorbell. Nate hesitates but ultimately allows her to enter. While sharing whiskey, Dominika discloses to Nate that his boss assaulted her. When Nate questions how she knows his address, Dominika raises the TV volume to ensure their conversation remains private. Curious about Nate's past, Dominika asks about the incident in the park in Russia, and they share a kiss after he confides in her. Nate urges Dominika to leave and decide what she truly desires. The following day, Ivan visits Dominika before departing for Vienna. Concerned about her progress with Nate, Ivan emphasizes the urgency of the situation. To stall for time, Dominika fabricates a story, claiming she's also collaborating with Marta on a separate case involving a bouncer, but requires additional funds. Ivan agrees and prepares to leave. While retrieving his coat, Dominika discreetly examines his passport. After Ivan's departure, Marta confronts Dominika with a gun, furious that the voucher case is meant to be hers alone. Dominika assures Marta that she'll credit her and provide extra compensation. Reluctantly, Marta agrees, realizing she has no alternative. Later, Dominika travels to Vienna and opens a bank account there, while Marta visits Volentop to propose a solution for dealing with Dominika. Dominika returns to her apartment that night and discovers Marta's lifeless body in the bathtub. Suddenly, Sergei emerges behind her, seizing her by the neck to deliver a stern warning. He demonstrates the consequences of sharing secrets and instructs her to contact the police before vanishing. Meanwhile, Nate reports to his superiors about his meeting with Marvel in Vienna. Marvel has provided him with files confirming Dominika's identity as a Sparrow, leading Nate to consider her as a potential recruit. On the other hand, Dominika faces interrogation by the police, but remains tight-lipped. Upon leaving the precinct, she encounters Nate waiting for her outside. They retreat to Nate's place, where he admits his knowledge of her Sparrow status. In response, Dominika shares her backstory, highlighting her sole concern for her mother's well-being. Nate proposes that Dominika becomes a double agent for him, promising her protection. She requests time to consider his offer and retires to his room. Later that night, she emerges and joins Nate on the couch. After confirming her trust in him, they share an intimate moment. The following morning, Dominika agrees to Nate's proposal and resumes her routine. She fabricates a report claiming she has Nate under her control and returns to her apartment to await his signal, a phone call playing her favorite song. Dominika meets with Nate's superiors and undergoes a rigorous lie detector test to assess her trustworthiness. Upon passing the test, she boldly requests financial compensation. Initially met with laughter, Dominika's demeanor shifts when she reveals her ability to provide information on Voucher. Impressed, Nate's superiors agree to her demands. On the following Friday, the entire team travels to London for a meeting with Voucher. Dominika is accommodated in a specially prepared hotel room, equipped with security cameras for monitoring. Moments later, while Dominika waits at the bar for Voucher's arrival, he is unexpectedly joined by Volentop, who claims to offer assistance. Aware that Volentop's presence may jeopardize the meeting, Dominika discreetly directs him to her hotel room to avoid alarming Voucher. Voucher arrives promptly, and Dominika approaches her, disclosing Marta's murder. Uncomfortable with this sudden turn of events, Voucher prepares to depart, but Dominika persuades her to stay by invoking the threat of incriminating photographs and mentioning the promised payment, and both women adjourn to Dominika's room where Volentop awaits. In the privacy of the room, Voucher exchanges the discs for the agreed-upon payment. Dominika feigns inspecting the discs on her computer, but substitutes them with the CIA's duplicates. With the exchange concluded, Dominika and Volentop depart, instructing Voucher to delay her departure by an hour. However, as she traverses the street, Voucher senses she is being pursued. She discards the money in a trash can and ventures across the street, where a passing truck collides with her, resulting in her demise. Dominika witnesses the tragedy from the confines of a car with Volentop, who swiftly receives the news via phone. Volentop informs Dominika that they have received orders to return to Moscow urgently and seizes her passport. Upon their arrival in Moscow, Ivan confiscates the discs from Volentop before apprehending him. Both Dominika and Volentop come under suspicion of colluding with the Americans. During interrogation, Dominika vehemently denies any involvement, despite enduring various forms of torture in an attempt to extract the truth. Even when shown a video of Volentop's execution for lying, Dominika remains steadfast in her denial. After convincing Ivan to protect her, Dominika is allowed to return home. But when she gets there, she feels so ashamed of what she's been through that she can't even hug her own mother. Later, Ivan tells her she can keep working on Nate, and she kisses him before leaving. Back in Budapest, Dominika meets Nate and persuades him to help her and her mother father move to America and to give her more money. Nate agrees, and they spend the night together. In the middle of the night, Dominika hears a noise and finds Sergei torturing Nate in the kitchen. She pretends to help Sergei at first, but then she turns against him, freeing Nate and ultimately killing Sergei in a fight. The next day, Dominika wakes up in the hospital and steps out for a smoke. There, she meets Korchnoi, who confesses he is Marvel. Worried about being caught, he proposes a plan for Dominika to expose him, making her a national hero and his successor as a mole. Dominika doesn't immediately agree, but after his departure, she checks on Nate before deciding her course of action. She surrenders herself to the police and demands to see the Russian ambassador. Once face to face, she bargains for her freedom in exchange for revealing the mole's identity. A meeting is arranged at an airport that night, with Nate accompanying her as a witness. Although Nate is resentful, suspecting Dominika used him, their encounter at the airport takes a dramatic turn when the supposed mole, unveiled by Dominika, turns out to be her uncle Ivan. Nate confirms Ivan's identity, leading to an exchange where Ivan is subsequently shot by a Russian sniper, while Dominika is rescued and flown away on a helicopter. Upon her return to Russia, Dominika is hailed as a heroine and granted a new life.